So conducting initial introduction. So this is, all right, I've got a dog that we want to try to introduce or reintroduce if we failed before. We want to try to, we're basically introducing to another dog. Just a reminder, this is the process: NIPD, notice, interpret, predict, decide, execute. So kind of the basement level, we talked about the social ceiling. The basement is a dog hasn't had a successful interaction. So our goal is basically to get this dog to successfully interact and even out with one well-matched helper dog with potential conflict triggers minimized. So I'm being really careful about gaits. I'm being really careful about not petting them and not giving them attention and not anything that I think, I'm just trying to minimize as much as possible. I can't get rid of everything, but I'm going to try to minimize what I can. And even out basically means we're getting dogs that the dog is relaxing, their body language is getting softer, they're not on edge like they might get upset any second kind of thing. They might be starting to play. Reduction of behaviors we consider unskillful. Generally, they're just looking more appropriate in their interactions. Less stiffness, less maybe over the back. Humping often will happen more when they get comfortable, so but less overreaction too. So let's say they do hump and then the dog corrects. They won't be overreacting to that kind of stuff necessarily. Less overreaction to any inappropriate behavior from the other dog, that kind of thing. What does success look like for each dog? I think depending on the context, you might have different goals for the dogs, different purposes you're trying to achieve. For me, generally, I'm just looking to take steps forward each time. Again, I try not to have a goal. If I can help it, I try not to have a goal in mind, like a final goal in mind, because I don't know what the capacity is going to be, and I don't want to limit the dog based on what I think. So I don't want to say, I just want him to be okay with 3 dogs, when maybe I can get him to be good with a bunch of different, groups. There are times where if you work with a client, there might be certain things, or daycare, you might have certain types of groups that you want to try to get them okay with. Get answers, gain understanding. I learn more about dogs in a play group than I can in any other way. I don't know why, but I really feel like you can really see who the dog is when they're evened out in a play group, like they're relaxed in that play group, and I feel like you can really get a lot more information that way. What's the dog ceiling? What's good enough? There's times where, again, you're under time constraints. You might say, all right, I just need this dog to be okay with 2 or 3 dogs, and then that's all I'm going to worry about. So there are times when you might just set a limit if that's all the time you have, or I want to be able to say on his adoption card, he can play with certain dogs with the right introduction or something like that. Sometimes it is good enough. You don't need to try to reach that ceiling, but I always want to try to, if I have the time and the resources. Anytime I'm doing a sort of an introduction, I'm kind of mentally just going through this checklist in my head. Assessing resources. I'm doing a risk-reward assessment to make sure that it's something worth doing. Predict the target dog's behavior, decide on the helper dog, decide on the method of introduction I'm going to use, and define the handler roles if it's necessary. So these are the resources we're going to need. We're going to obviously need a socially challenged dog and well-matched helper dogs. 2+ handlers is preferred, preferably competent. I've done it a lot by myself. There are times I prefer doing it by myself because if sometimes I'd rather do it by myself than have an incompetent handler with me that I have to worry about what they're doing. The problem with doing it by yourself is if something goes wrong, it can be a nightmare to try to break up a fight. It can be really a pain, not fun. So I prefer to have to have somebody competent working with me and that knows the rules, basically. Fenced area, ideally 2 areas with fence between, interrupter tools, And ancillary tools. The types of interrupter tools that I use most commonly, the hose is my favorite thing by far. If I have the hose, I feel like I feel much more at home in a play group than if I have to use a water bottle or something like that. The hose I just feel like is really, it's like really, I can vary the intensity really widely. I rarely spray directly at a dog or a group of dogs. It's more often I'm spraying in the air, making it like almost like it's raining on them just to scatter them. Sometimes I'll spray near their feet. The sound of, if it's pebbles or whatever, will sometimes just be enough to startle. Sometimes I'll just spray against it. If it's a wooden fence, the noise it'll be enough. I can have tactile, I can give them tactile information from a distance, which is nice. So I can have them feel something that I'm causing from a distance, which is good. If I don't, there's certain, when I was at the OKC shelter, there was no hose. I couldn't do the hose. I had to use spray bottles. It's not preferred, but if I have to do it, that's what I'll do. So sometimes I'll use a pet corrector, which is basically just like canned air. It's rare I use them, but first of all, it's really expensive. And annoyingly, there's no like safety, so I'm constantly like, it ends up open and I bend and I'm just accidentally hitting it all the time. I hate these things. But when I do use them, it's distance from the dog, behind my back, very short. And I see if they respond to it. If they don't, then I start getting closer and closer until they get a response. Some dogs are gonna really freak out with this kind of stuff. So I don't use it that often. It's really after, like, I'm relying on my hose usually and my water tools more than that, and also this thing, which we'll get to. The shake can is similar. Start it behind my back, fairly mild, and then increase intensity as needed. So shake can is like, I just have Altoids and some pennies in here, but often it's just like a tin can with pebbles or coins in there that you shake. Again, behind your back. And again, the hand that I'm going to give you guys tomorrow has some of the negatives, but the problem, like, all the dogs are going to hear it, so you're not just correcting one dog. You have to really use these things wisely. Again, the goal is never to scare them. It's just to get their attention quickly off of whatever they're doing that you're concerned about. This is something I only started using. It's called livestock boards or pig boards. I only started using them fairly recently, but I've found them to be really useful extensions of, I use like an extension of my body. So it helps me create space, create space between dogs when needed. It helps me at the gates. Sometimes I use it as an interrupter too. I'll just near them just to make noise, or I'll hit something against it. But yeah, those are the tools that I use. And then these other tools, air horn, spray shield. Spray shield is citronella spray, air horn. That's only if a fight. The air horn is what I'll use. If there's a fight breaks out, I'll blast the air horn. It's the only time I'll ever use an air horn. And citronella spray, Halt is like a mild pepper spray type thing. That's only if a dog's latching on, really. And then there's a bite stick, which, there's a million different kinds of looks like a sword or something, but hopefully you're not going to need these things very often, especially the citronella spray and the bite stick, but good to have them there for when you do need them. There might be other interrupters that people use. I don't know if anybody has any others. I
teach my staff that the supers we use to me is kind of
yeah.
Create space. It's like 3-inch your feet on your arm.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually keep a sticky in my pocket. If somebody looks like they're about to start a squabble, I just squeak it.
Yeah.
I'll forget what they're doing and they go.
Yeah, that can help. That if you have a dog that's super squeaky motivated, you could get everybody coming to you excitable, which might cause an issue, but it depends on your dogs.
I find that, well, I've got a big yard. I've got like, well, yeah, acre.
Yeah.
And it's long distance too, so it's really far away. I just squeak it.
Yeah.
On the pack.
Oh, that's, yeah, cool. Yeah.
Not really rush me or anything. They
Yeah.
They're curious. They know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, so, you know, things are going to work in different contexts differently sometimes. So,
I had a comment.
yeah.
Too, actually. So, at least if you get to know a dog a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you can figure out what is most aversive to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, preparing to have like multiple things on hand,
Mhm.
knowing sometimes when the water, like spraying the water hose could actually start a fight.
Yeah.
If a dog is
Super.
into it
Mhm.
and starts going crazy about it.
Yeah, and that's actually, I meant to mention that, and I think it's in the paperwork. In daycares especially, I find that a lot of the dogs get used to playing with the hose, and that can backfire on you big time. If you've got, because you can get arousal levels heightening, guarding the hose. So you do have, in the playgroup environment, you do have to watch for that, I think. You know, there's a lot of, you got to train your staff really well on the interrupter tools, because they'll use them wrong and ruin them basically for your dogs if they're not trained properly. Overusing the water, overusing, you know, and anytime I'm using an interrupter, my voice comes first. It's always voice interrupter. I'm trying to attach the interrupter to the voice. It's really important. And we're trying to use the least aversive tool that will work in that situation, in each situation. When you get to know the dogs, it's like Erica said, when you get to know the dogs better, you get to know what they handle well, what they don't handle well, and you'll know what to be aware of. And then having something to carry this stuff on, it doesn't help, like you want to be able to have this stuff really accessible. So I use like a thing I got from Home Depot, just like a little tool thing, but whatever works for you. It's not perfect. There's things I wish, like I haven't found the perfect sort of thing to wear. It's bulky. So any questions about interrupters anymore? Yeah.
Do you worry with the citronella spray that even once it's over, like the aversive is continuing because they're still in vein, even though?
If I had to get that far, no, because it's only really if there's a latch on and I'm just like, I just need to get them to get off each other, and I'm not worrying about that at that point personally. Maybe I should, but I don't. My goal is to stop it as quickly as I can at that point. All right, ancillary tools, slip leads. Everybody should have slip leads on them. I use like this multi-purpose lead thing that I can use as a slip. Long lines, pretty explanatory. Gentle leaders and halties, sometimes I'll use those. I'll put a dog on a gentle leader, especially if that has shown to decrease their reactivity on leash. I'll sometimes put it on a dog just to wear loose, because I find sometimes it helps bring them down a notch. If they're conditioned to it, they've been using it on a leash, and it's helped them. Everybody knows what a gentle leader is, right? The head halter. Muzzles, you got basket muzzles, which are gonna, you know, keep their mouths in there. And then sometimes I'll use these modified muzzles, which basically they can open their mouths and they can breathe and pant, drink water, but they can't actually latch on to a dog with this on. I'll sometimes use these if dog isn't tolerating this very well. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to both train this one and to tolerate it, to desensitize and tolerate it. Realistic stuffed dog I'll use sometimes. You used to be able to get a bunch of different ones, different kinds, but now all I can find is this black lab one, which isn't ideal. I'd rather have a kind of multicolored kind of dog or something, but sometimes I'll use this for certain things. We'll talk about that in a second. So the muzzles, the beauty of a muzzle is it's going to reduce the risk of injury immensely if it's sized properly, if it's securely on the dog. You can take bigger risks more. You can take bigger risks more confidently if you know the dogs aren't going to get hurt doing it, and you're not going to have to explain to the owner that the dog got hurt. They're definitely best if they're preconditioned. Dogs can get really stressed from it, and it can actually make their interaction worse if they're very stressed. That being said, there are certain situations in a shelter I don't have necessarily time to spend weeks desensitizing a muzzle. Sometimes once they're in that environment, they're fixated on the dog or whatever's going on that they don't fuss so much that it's too big of a problem. You just might have to, you play with it a little bit and see if it's too much, that kind of thing. I mean, even a couple of days of desensitization can help. So if you have the time, if you have the staff, you might just, you might say, okay, next week I'm going to try to socialize this dog. In the meantime, let's 10, 15 minutes of desensitization every day. It might be really helpful because it really does. It's really nice when I'm really concerned about a dog and I can put that muzzle on and not be quite as concerned. So the realistic stuffed dog, this is something I will use once in a while to get information more than anything, right? And it's information that I'm going to take very much with a grain of salt. But it's try to get an idea of what the dog's first instinctive action is going to be when the barrier is removed. This is especially like for those kind of fence reactive dogs, leash reactive dogs that I don't really know if once they get to that dog off leash, or if they might just be totally fine, or they might just go right in and jump the dog. Will they try to engage in that greeting process, that greeting ritual, or are they just going to tackle the dog? But it's really got to be taken a grain of salt. I've had situations where they did terrible with this, but then did fine with a real dog. It really should be taken with a grain of salt. It's really an information gathering thing, but you say, okay, it gives me a little bit of information. When I use it, it will basically, let's say Ashley was the dog, I would face it this or like that or something, so that when they first approach, it's going to be the butt that they approach first. And what I'm looking for is, what often happens and what I like to see is, they come, they sniff the butt, they sniff the face, and then often for some reason, they'll start to hump the dog. And I don't know why, but they often will hump the thing. But that's what I'm looking for. And I have no idea at what point they realize it's not real. I can't tell. Like, they go through the process and they're like acting. So let's say the dog runs out, does the little greeting ritual, and then ignores it. At that point, he was okay with this dog that was perfectly still, not moving. Now what happens if I start to move it around? Sometimes that'll trigger the dog to then suddenly show some of the behavior I was worried about. Or sometimes I can get the dog to play. I can just start doing like little play bows and stuff like that. And you'll be surprised that your dog will start to play. Again, I don't know at what point they realize it's fake, but gives me some information. And that's all it should be. Don't assume that they're going to act the same way once you have a real live dog that's actually moving, but it helps a little bit. All right, so that's our resources. Risk reward, we talked about this a little bit, but what are the actual risks, right? Try to identify them. And what are the benefits? What are the actual benefits to this? Let's say you're in a shelter, you get this 1-year-old purebred, I don't know, what's a dog that gets adopted real fast? Golden Doodle, right? You get this 1-year-old Golden Doodle who is not going to be there more than 2 days, tops. Let's say he came in with a history, whatever. If I've got the time, sure, I'll work with him. But at that point, it's like, that dog's going to be gone out of here anyway. It'd be nice to be able to give information to the owner, but it might be something where I'm like, it's not going to benefit this dog that much for me to socialize this dog today or start working on it today. If he's there for a week or two, sure. Or another example might be like, let's say client has a 13-year-old dog who has not really been around other dogs, and suddenly they want them to socialize, or they want them to go to daycare. And you're like, what? And this dog, maybe there's a history there that the dog's negative history. He's living a perfectly happy life. Might not be something I want to take on. Am I really going to do that much good for this dog at this point? Maybe just because the owner, these are the things you're kind of weighing, whether it's worth it or not. Try to consider the situation from multiple perspectives too. So like, again, the shelter environment, being able to tell the owners more specific details about this dog's social capabilities, I think can be really helpful. There's just multiple ways you just want to think about whether it's worth it. Normally, I think it's always worth it, but there are times where I'm just like the amount of work. I mean, time matters, right? Like the amount of work it's going to take for this dog, when I could be also, I've got 100 other dogs to get out, and it might not be worth it for that golden retriever to work that hard on it. This was actually an issue too with when I was at the city shelter in Oklahoma. I'd get this list every day of 100 dogs to get out by myself, and they'd like me to do a lot of the new dogs that came in. And I'd look at these dogs, I'm like, this dog's not going to be here tomorrow. Meanwhile, I've got dogs that have been here for a month. I want to get those out because I know this one, it doesn't matter, who cares? We need to get the guys that are sitting here in the conditions that these dogs are living in is terrible. They only got out for play groups, like they didn't get out at all otherwise. And I only could get them out maybe twice a week, each dog. So it was a rough situation for them. So yeah, really try to assess that, whether it makes sense. And again, remember to get ego out of it. Oh, I really want to show people that, it's like, try to do it for the right reasons, really. Get background information as much as you can. You should try to get age, size, gender, breed, that kind of stuff. Past outcomes and encounters and the contexts. Try to get whatever, who, what, when, where, you can. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to get that. It's incredible how people, they just fall back into interpretation. Like, he just attacked him out of nowhere. And it's like, what? Right, tell me what happened. So you just do your best. Take everything with a grain of salt that you hear, unless it's coming from a really reliable source. If you know that the person that is giving you this information is knows what they're doing and has good information for you, take it with a grain of salt. Trust your eyes, trust your intuition. The one thing I do weigh heavily is the injury details. So if I know both ways, so if they're like, oh my God, I've taken him to the dog park 30 times, every time he's gotten into a fight. So what were the injuries? Oh, there was no injuries. Awesome. That tells me that my risk level isn't super high here if they're telling me the truth. So that's great. If I have a dog, one encounter, sent the dog to the vet, I'm going to take that pretty seriously, and I'm probably using a muzzle on that no matter what I think I'm seeing. So I tend to weigh that much more heavily. Predict the target dog's behavior. All right, I've got this dog in mind. Did you have a question? 10 minutes? Okay. I've got this target dog, this dog I'm planning on working with. What do I expect this dog to do? I'm trying to play it out in my head. Play out the video in my head of what I'm expecting. When I bring him out, what's he gonna do when he first sees the helper dog? Is he gonna be reactive? Is he gonna ignore? What am I expecting? Am I expecting him to want to take space from the dog, or I'm expecting him to be kind of avoidant, want space from the other dog? What behaviors do I expect at different points? Yeah, so as soon as they come out behind the fence, am I expecting reactivity? Am I expecting leash reactivity? What am I expecting, basically? If you've got high energy, high arousal dogs, I recommend trying to wear them out a little bit first outside of that. Try to take off that top end of that, take them on a walk. We used to hear, when we were here, there were times where I told people in the winter, come back in the summer so I could tire this dog out a little bit, because I couldn't tire them out in the winter. Because the weather matters. Like, dogs are more energetic in the cold and the cooler weather. You try to compensate when you can. You don't always have you can't always do it, but when you can. Just generally, so every dog is different, but generally speaking, your extroverted dogs are going to come on stronger, take space from other dogs. Their approach initially, it's going to be unskillful potentially, and it could be aggressive, quote unquote, especially if their arousal level is high. May react with aggressive behavior if the helper corrects. What I was saying before, the helper may try to correct the dog's unskilled behavior, and then your target dog might reciprocate. Might react to, if the helper dog takes their space, they might not react well to that. They may show assertive signals during the greeting, so like neck over the back or neck over the neck sort of stuff. Some humping maybe. May initiate conflict when the other dog shows assertive signals. If the other dog goes over their neck, sometimes they don't love that. May show conflicting signals. So you see that sometimes at the fences. You'll see a mixture of reactivity and play signals, little moments. They show kind of conflicting signals of what they want to, but they're not sure. They're not sure. There's probably others. I just tried to think typically what you might see. Introverted they're gonna more likely be more on the avoidance side. They might freeze, become defensive, which basically show teeth snap when another dog approaches or during the greeting ritual. They may show conflicting signals. Then, based on what you're expecting, you're going to decide on your helper dog, and you've got your candidates of helper dogs, and you're going to try to think, all right, well, what dogs do I have that are going to be best, make success more likely for the target dog, or less likely for the target dog. Try to think about all the behaviors that they might show at every point. Is this going to make it worse for the target dog, or better? And sometimes you're going to have to make compromises. You might be like, I don't love this about this dog, but he has this. Are they a good match based on the introversion extroversion scale? Sometimes you might have a dog that is a bit of a mismatch on that scale. You think one's going to come on too strong for the other dog, but then the other things about this dog are really good. If we can get past that initial, like, introversion extroversion tends to be more about the introduction. And then we get into play style matches after the introduction, really. Yeah, so can I compensate for those mismatches in some way as the handler? And we'll go through some of those techniques. Yeah, how do you expect a dog to react at different points in your response to your predicted target dog behaviors? So if you expect your target dog to be reactive at the fence, do you think this helper dog is gonna ignore it, or do you think they're gonna fight back and you're gonna have fence fighting, and that might not be the right helper dog for that situation? Unless you can stop it quickly. But in most cases, like I mentioned, I like them to be a year old. This is the same slide as before. Don't need perfect social skills, just right attributes for the target dog. Won't initiate conflict, hopefully, or tends not to. Resilient, modulates arousal level well, and they'll tell you how to proceed. Special, so that's your kind of general helper dog characteristics. For extroverted dogs, you want them to be more extroverted leaning most of the time. I like to use opposite gender if possible, but I'm not gonna, if I've got the perfect characteristics in one dog and it's the same gender, gonna use that dog rather than another dog just because he's a different gender. Size differences, I think, are tricky. I don't know, sometimes I'm like, especially with the extroverts, I'm like, I feel like sometimes a little bit bigger is better for them, sometimes a little bit smaller. Usually I want them to be around the same size, but there is sometimes a difference in a bit bigger or a bit smaller. But this is where the fence can be really helpful for both gender and size stuff. You can bring out a dog, decide, I want to see what he looks like with this other dog, and let the target dog decide. If he seems better with one, I can't tell you how many times I think I have the right helper dog, and then it turns out a different one was way better, that I was like, oh, okay. That's the beauty of using the fence, I think, is you can get help from the target potentially. For an introvert target dog, I want to use somebody more introverted leaning, but not all the time. I actually should probably change that, because a lot of times I like to use, if I've got an introverted dog, I often like to use a much smaller dog that's extroverted, especially if that target dog is in the age of wanting to play, like the most common age, that sort of younger ages. Sometimes I like to use an extroverted dog to help bring them out of their shell, smaller so that they're less intimidating. And only if they're not showing any defensive behavior. Tends to be responsive to other dog signals. Yeah, you want a dog that's gonna, if the dog's asking for space, is gonna give him that space. Otherwise, you need to get involved to help that dog get the space they want. Do play, they tend to play more gently. Is typically what you want. And again, opposite gender if possible, not the expensive behavior match. And I think it's generally even less important for the more introvert side than the extrovert for whatever reason. I might be wrong on that, but it's what I feel like. A lot of this stuff it's all really from my experience of doing this over the years. And you guys have your own experiences that love it if you want to share any tips and stuff that you have that you've learned. Because one thing about this topic in particular, that when they asked me about doing this, I was pretty happy, like excited to do it, because I don't feel like there are resources for socializing. And I might be wrong. If you have any resources, please share them with me. But specifically for dealing with the dogs that struggle in these situations, there's play group stuff. There's not even a lot of that out there. But I don't really see anything that's for the kind of socially challenged dogs, doing off-leash stuff with them. So I didn't have anything to go on. I couldn't find anything really to go on to base this stuff on. So it's really like coming from my intuition and what I've learned doing it. I know there's stuff that people are doing that is probably brilliant that I don't know about. So yeah, like I think I'm happy to hear about that stuff and offer it up to everybody. We're all here to learn, I think. Okay, so these are some of the common sort of techniques and methods that I use for conducting introductions. The fence intro is by far the one I like doing the most, and it's always the one I start with pretty much. Occasionally maybe I won't if I don't start with this, it's usually because I don't have a yard to work in. But and basically what I'm doing on a fence intro is I'm bringing the helper dog out first, then the target dog in an adjacent yard, and allowing it to interact through the fence. Sometimes I can't bring the helper dog out first, but I like to, mainly because some dogs, once they're in that space, it's their space. So potential conflict trigger, they're guarding that space or whatever you want to call it. I'd rather bring the dog into bring the target dog into the helper dog space if I can. I'll usually keep the target dog on a drag leash or a long leash, especially if reactivity is expected. If I'm getting fence reactivity, I will interrupt it. I'll attempt to interrupt it, usually either by using that leash to pull them back. They stop for a second, I'll let them go back to the fence. If they bark again, if they react again, I'll pull them back. And I'll keep doing it until it starts to reduce. Or I'll use my interrupter tools. This is different than training for people that do train for reactivity and things like that, where we're trying to keep them under threshold all the time. This is different, where we're gonna, basically, we know they're gonna go over threshold. Our goal is to see if we can interrupt that so that they can use their brains to do the interaction that we want. Fixate. We're looking for them to fixate a little bit less and start showing some non-reactive behaviors where they're trying to interact with the other dog in a sense. I don't really want them ignoring the other dog either. In fact, if I have a dog that's completely ignoring, that worries me more than reactivity a lot of times. And I mean by completely ignoring, it's like they have nothing to do with the dog.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Why?
Yeah.
I don't get a read. You know, I don't get a read, and they're not showing me that they have, like with reactivity, a lot of times it's from the interest of social. They're interested in that dog. When there's no interest, I'm like, how do I make them interested, right? You know, so it's like a harder step in a way. Sometimes it's just them being introverted and shy, and you get the, you know, I think it's a different vibe when it's that. It's hard to explain it when it's a dog that's just scared versus a dog that's just like, I don't care, and like, and especially if they've got a history of not interacting, I think that is a red flag for me. I don't see it very often though, honestly. And usually it's maybe some older dogs, but I don't see it that often. I do think like age matters too for this. Like I get, I don't know, maybe 5 years and up, I feel like my anxiety about it goes up with the dogs if they've got no history. Like I feel like around from like, you know, puppy to about 4 or 5, I'm pretty confident that I can make it work. And then 5, and I start to get a little bit like, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge to help. But I mean, I do it a lot, and it often does. We often can. And I might, again, this is just me. This might be one of my biases too. I just don't know.
I'm trying to take over. I
Yeah.
find that very interesting too, because like my comfort level, I'm like puppy 3 to 2, that's gonna be easy. 3 to 5 is where I'm like, okay, I don't know, they could go either way. But then when they hit 6, 7, that's where I start to get comfortable again. 'Cause I'm like, they're gonna be more seniors and you like our calm guys.
Yeah, no,
It's just interesting.
if it's a dog, if it's dogs that I'm talking if it's a dog that's with a history.
Oh, okay.
So if it's a history of problems, or there's something I'm finding concerning about that dog, then that's, yeah, because otherwise if it's a dog that I'm just socializing that I have no history on, yeah, then that's fine, yeah. But when you know, dog's bitten 3 dogs in the past and they're 8 years old and they're big, I'm kind of like, oh, this is gonna be tricky. Yeah, and then so once I feel like they're engaging fairly well at the fence, I'll usually try to get the helper dog away from the gate and let the target dog in while the helper dog is away from the gate. It's my default because I just feel like we get such a better read on the dogs if they're not being controlled by the leash. Human error is, I think, by far the biggest problem with like leash intros and stuff. I hate doing leash intros. I really try to avoid it. Occasionally I have to, and I just don't like it. And also when you're doing this, watch both dogs, especially if you know that helper dog really well. Really watch their behavior too, but you're trying to see how both are reacting to each other at the fence. If fixation and arousal reactivity is not reducing at the fence, I will most often move on to another method. So time will either fix it, like just spending some time and just waiting and interrupting. You should see it reduce. If it doesn't reduce, then I usually move on to a different method. There have been occasional dogs where I'm like, I just have a feeling, and I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling that once they're nose to nose with the dog, they're gonna be fine once we get past the barrier. It might depend on how worried I am about injury, whether I'm gonna move on. Like if it's a year-old, I don't know, year-old like pup that's just, you can just tell is super excited. You'll see one, I think I have video of one later. I'll sometimes just do the intro anyway. And if I'm really worried, I can also do the fake dog thing and just see if that gives me any information. So, a bunch of videos here of these two. So, this was at the Oklahoma City shelter. This dog here on the left, on the left, the brindle dog is Lily, and Alvara, that's the target dog. Alvara is my helper. Alvara had shown herself to be like a really good helper. Like had handled so many dogs so well. And Lily, I think, so I'm doing this on my own, but I think the week before we had tried with Lily, I had somebody helping me, and we tried doing a leash intro with her because she's extremely reactive in the kennel, and I think she was being extremely reactive in the behind the fence. So we decided to do like a walk, like a parallel walk, and then do a leash intro. And as soon as she met the dog, she basically pounced on the dog. With the leashes, we kept it safe. That's what the leashes are for. Unfortunately, they cause issues too. But so nothing, there's no injuries or anything. I think she had bad report too from the home, if I remember right. So I was pretty concerned about this one. Again, I'm working alone. So I'm like, if there's a fight here, it's gonna suck. So I decided, all right, I'm gonna try this with her. And already I'm seeing like her reactivity is not super bad here. I mean, she's barking a little, and I'm nervous about it. What Alvara does is like, she's like, and she's, you know, it'd be nice if maybe she was a little looser, but she knows what she's doing. She's not escalating her arousal, right? Like what she's doing is not escalating. And there's like a kind of little play bow there. And she keeps going up, and that's important. She's not avoiding it. All right, so let's see, I'm pretty good about it. I decide to bring her in. Again, I'm working alone, so trying to manage the fence is a bit difficult, so I have to kind of just spray Alvara. I wait until I feel like the interactions are okay here. And you see that pounce there? Oops. How do I?
Where you spray to get her off.
Yeah. I was just trying to get her to move away a bit, just to kind of give us a little space. I guess I can't. I was hoping to. All right. So you see that pounce there, right? So a lot of dogs are gonna react defensively right there, and you're gonna have a fight, and Lily is gonna be the one that pays for it most likely, because she kind of comes on like a little strong, right? But what Alvara does is perfect. She just kind of, she handles that beautifully. She just kind of, boop. And then, I can't control the video here. It sucks. Thought I could. And so here, I'm trying to close the gate. She's not trying to get out. She just thinks I'm about to leave, so I'm just trying to clasp the gate. And so here she's like, okay, you're being weird, but I'm gonna handle it. I'm gonna handle it. And you're gonna see her start to try to engage. And that, Lily starts to get aroused, she stops, right? Now, this sort of chase play is sometimes not the best for a dog like Lily, because the speed kind of escalates her, but it was the type of play that Alvara tends to do. For some reason, I thought she'd be more interested in playing in the bigger yard here, so we move. This is, you know, I'm opening the gates. This could be a problem, but I had to do it somehow, and sometimes just doing it quickly is the best way to get it over with. And this I love because now they're exploring. It's not about them. They're checking out the second yard, sniffing around. And you'll see Alvara start to try to instigate play here. So, I mean, it looks pretty good. Nice little shake off. And you can see her, like, her hackles are raised and stuff, and that's fine. I mean, she's a little aroused, and I think that's expected with that kind of speed play. I don't love them under the bench, like under the thing there, but that's okay.
You said Lily had a history.
I don't remember what it was exactly, but I remember there was some sort of home history that I mean, it was probably very vague, like, doesn't like dogs.
She was returned.
Yeah. So heard it escalating a little bit, so I just sort of verbally interrupted. Again, like a dog, like Alvara's out with me a lot. She knows my voice. I don't really have to ever, I mean, she wasn't doing anything wrong. It's just that I was just trying to slow them down a little bit. That's something to watch, see how they go over to the person. So in my head, I'm just like watching, like, do I do anything? Do I, I have a choice. I can try to get them away from the gate. Might that cause more problems? Maybe. And you're making those choices. And I decided, like, I was feeling pretty okay about it at that point. So then, so I think I brought them out again like a few days later together, and they did fine again. So then I'm like, okay, what's the next step? I want to try another dog because it's just not practical for her just to, in that environment where I have 100 dogs, I need to try to expand. So I say, okay, well, what other dogs do I have that are candidates? And I didn't have many, because all the dogs there were pretty, they're not a super ton of solid dogs. So I think to myself, okay, well, what's the most important quality that the dog has? Anybody have a guess?
When are they react?
Exactly. That when she comes on like an idiot, they're not gonna reciprocate and fight back, right? So I have this dog Charlie, this black lab thing, who's complete nut job. Another one, I mean, not socially skilled in the sense that lots of dogs could not stand him because he was just like blah, all the time. And I'm like, and dogs are correcting him, and he's just like wee, wee, and I'm like, okay, well, he's probably not gonna mind what she does. So I bring him out, and as I expected, she's a little bit more set off by him because he's just like running around. I mean, it's not bad. This could be way worse. So I mean, I feel okay about it, but. And I'm not even really trying to interrupt it because she's stopping herself. She's not going, rah, 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 rah. She's, rah, rah, stop, rah, rah, stop. I decided to bring out Alvara, thinking maybe she could be a buffer where maybe we'll get Charlie to show some friendly signals to Alvara and kind of transfer that to Charlie. I don't think it really worked very well. We'll see. Can't remember. Charlie's a boy, and that's the other thing. I took Alvara. She's same gender because of her behavior. Charlie's male, so I thought I wanted to try her with a male. So I mean, she's giving pretty conflicted signals here. I mean, the barking, honestly, I'm torn at this point, like how much I'm taking it seriously or not. Again, I'm trying to not get this dog Lily into trouble because she would be euthanized fast because she was horrible in her kennel. Nice little pay signal to Alvara there. I'd like to see it transfer to Charlie. I went into her yard now just to try to interrupt. I think I was trying to interrupt her reactivity a little bit here. And so I interrupt there. You heard that little hey, hey, and I probably gave a little spray in the air. And that's all I mean by interruption. It's like, gives her a chance to reset. And that was good. And this was, I don't know if bringing Alvara was the smartest thing because it made them go faster and then she escalated a little bit more, but I don't know. It might have been fine. I don't know. These are the questions though you're constantly asking yourself, like, should I have done that? And what I'm waiting for is for her to really just interact with Charlie and not do the little barking and just sort of the way she did it with Alvara. where she stopped.
Was this a different day?
This is a week later.
Okay.
About a week, yeah. And remember, she's been locked up in her kennel that whole time. I think this is more of the same. Oh no, this is where I think, so at this point I think I'm starting to see, I might have brought, did I bring, oh no, Alvar's still there. I'm starting to see her just like not engage as much, I think. And there's a bit here, yeah. So that's what I'm looking for. And then when she does that and Lily doesn't react to that too much, like a little bit of pain, or hackles up a bit, but didn't overreact to it, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling okay about this now. So I moved to Alvara. I didn't want both dogs because I didn't want her to fixate on Alvara, Charlie to come in, and her to get upset with Charlie, because then Charlie could be third wheel kind of thing. I could be wrong, but that was my theory. This time I'm expecting, right? So now I've got a little history, right? I'm expecting her to pounce on Charlie. So I go in the yard first, so I'm kind of ready for it. And, oh wait, it doesn't happen. Wait, hold on. And it doesn't happen. Like, she doesn't do it. So I'm waiting again to make sure that they're interacting nicely at the fence. I don't know who I'm talking to here. So I love this. This looks good to me. All right, hurry up. So a little bit different there, but as soon as he starts moving, she escalates. And you can see it's a little more intense, right, with him as a spaz there. I don't think you're supposed to say that word anymore, but. And I gave her a little spray there just to kind of separate them. Again, I'm playing it cautious because I don't want to get this dog in trouble. I really wish I could. All right, I think the next one. And you can see she's looking much more relaxed and stuff now, right? With the speed just being, Charlie's not running around like crazy. It might have been too, I brought Alvara to burn some of Charlie's energy. That might have been one of the reasons. Let me go to the next here. And so can you hear the vocalization there? So I don't know what to make of it exactly, right? So I'm like very cautious of it, but I'm starting to get more comfortable with it as just being a little bit of what she does. Now that, the thing is, it could be what she does, but some dogs might not react well to it. So you have to take that into consideration. Like, some dogs just react poorly to that sort of thing. And then if they react poorly to her, she might react poorly back.
Yeah, mate.
They were pretty young.
Lily, I think I feel like she was about 4, and Charlie was about 1. So here, what I liked here was you'll see them actually engage in more of a wrestling style play, which I think is better for Lily. And if I had a dog that I thought was more appropriate for Lily, that would play that way. That's what I would have liked to have had. But you know, you have to, with that wrestling play comes arousal too, so you don't want anybody necessarily too forward with that. But you can see that looks so much nicer, and to me, her body language looks a lot more relaxed doing that. And you know, a little bit, her hackles went up a little there, but again, I'm not really taking it too seriously at this point. Like, the dogs tell you, right? Sometimes the hackles are really meaningful and sometimes they're not super meaningful. I didn't get a chance to do any more because she got adopted like 2 days later, because suddenly her card thing, her notes don't say that it's like we can be much more gentle about the language that she has. I don't know if that's why she got adopted, but it does seem to happen every time. Like, every time we finally get one of these dogs, some friends, they get adopted. It's great. Okay, so that's just sort of an example of a fence intro with a dog.